It's Kwiatkowski still on the front. He doesn't want to be there. He's going to try and maybe just slow it up to go again. This one is going to come down to a sprint. Van der Poel! Van der Poel goes! Van der Poel has launched his sprint. Alaphilippe on the right. Van der Poel on the left. Can you believe it? Well, he doesn't believe it. That is the most extraordinary conclusion to a bike race I have ever seen.
All right, welcome back, cycling fans, to the Between Two Wheels podcast. This is Tyler Janke doing a quick, we do a bunch of these quick things, but I'm trying to get some in when exciting things happen, which we just had, which was Amstel Gold. Thought I'd give some quick comments just about Amstel Gold. What an amazing race, and I mean for both the men and the women. Now, the women, I was only able to see some selected highlights, but the last 3 kilometers were pretty fantastic. So we'll do some Amstel Gold, men and women's, maybe a little Fletch Wallone preview, and then what happened at NCNCA Copperopolis? I don't know, actually. And tell you the truth, we're not going to get into that. We'll do a recap with Curt and Chris later on. Okay, Amstel Gold road race. Let's just go over it real quick. You had the 266 kilometer from Maastricht to Berg en Triggelet in the Netherlands, Holland, Dutch, whatever you want to call it there. 35 climbs, some repeating, but eventually all will take in their toll. Over 11,000 vertical feet of climbing, I believe. The route is not intuitive, and it looks like someone just threw out a spaghetti string on a map, and because the actual start and finish are pretty close to each other, but as far as the actual race goes, it just goes all over this Limburg area in the Netherlands. Start finish, like I said, aren't too far apart. The route goes everywhere. It's the only one-day World Tour stage race in the Netherlands, and is considered the most important Dutch road cycling event, as you can imagine, due to this only one that they have. Dutchman Jan Ross holds the winning record of 5 victories. Dutch beer brewer Amstel has served as the race's title sponsor since its creation in 1966. So it's not an old race necessarily, but it's definitely one that's been around since 66. Had some changes throughout the years. This year's edition featured the Cauberg climb, cresting in the side the last 2 kilometers, which they did a few times in a loop, both the men's and women's races. A little known fact that kind of comes into play: 1990 winner Andre van der Poel of the Netherlands, his son Matthew van der Poel. Okay. The women's race, it's roughly half the distance, 19 classified climbs, 126.8 kilometers through the southern Limburg, like I mentioned, area. The women's Amstel Gold Race offered a challenging course. The first 10 hills were a big loop that was followed by 3 laps of a finishing circuit with the Gemmelhemmenberg and the Bemmerleberg and the Cauberg. We'll just talk about the Cauberg. Okay, so let's go right to the women's race. You had on the last time up the big climb, Marianne Vos was kind of hitting the front with Team CCC Live. And then you had Katarina Nieuwedome of the Canyon SRAM team putting in a ferocious attack. With her, Vos attempts to go, and she's distancing her, and you start to see her pulling back. I couldn't get who it was, and it's a full blue kit with the yellow stripe. Maybe it's the Swedish team, Emily Farren, or I have to look that up again. But she actually comes to a dead stop, pulls her bike sideways. She's third in line on the climb, trying to catch on to Nieuwedome, puts her foot down, and when she does so, she stops, and then they go around the corners. But anyway, Nieuwedome powers over the climb, and then you had Annemiek van Vleuten of the Mitchelton Scott team trying to close her down. It could not close her down. You're talking about a 4 or 5 second gap over the top, and then you still have about a little over a kilometer and a half to the finish, and Nieuwedome just powers away and holds that distance of about 4 to 5 seconds, 3 to 5 seconds. And it's right in that range, and they're both just hammering away. And then in the last 200 meters or so, Van Vleuten tries to do a sprint. Nieuwedome doesn't sprint. She just sees she has it. She posts up. And so the finishing time at the end is the same time, but she being Van Vleuten, could never really hold that out. Marianne Vos ends up third, 10 seconds back with a group of Annemiek Langveld, Bols Domen, Sarah Paladin, Elik Cipollini, Cecily Ludwig of the Bigla team. They're all within, and then Demi Vollering of Netherlands from the Parkhill Valkenburg team. There was South African rider, I'm trying to remember her name. She ended up wrecking in the kind of a bunch at the 10 seconds back. Yeah, Taylor Wiles of Team USA, 33 seconds back for 12th place. But it was a great finish. Seeing the women, especially Niewiadoma, which we got a good close-up. I had a little conversation with her last year, did not record it, at Tour California, at the women's presser, the opener. Amazing rider. She did very well at Tour California. She's a well-known racer. I think she's won 12 to 15 races in her career. Big victory for her here. And very impressed with the way she took off on the climb, dropping Voss, everybody else, Van Vleuten trying to connect, and the one girl went to a complete standstill trying to keep up with her. Very good finish and very impressive for Niewiadoma. Okay, so the men. Okay, pretty amazing race there. I'm watching this pull in. So Mathieu van der Poel attacks about 44, I think, kilometers out, just shot out of a rocket. And I'm trying to remember who went with him. I don't remember who it was, but basically they get pulled back pretty simply, pretty soon right afterwards. And then you have Alaphilippe taking off with Fuglsang, and Van der Poel had just done his big work. So he kind of gets distanced, not able to go with them, but also coming through the back. Then a little bit later, you have Kwiatkowski, Matteo Trentin, and Mike Woods trying to be in between the gap to catch up to those two. You know, the gap's 50 seconds, a minute, somewhere around there. But to the middle section, it's around 40 seconds to those guys. Really steep climb, about 26 or so K. Woods is coming off, which I was surprised to see him get dropped over Matteo Trentin. But Woods gets spit out, come through. And I didn't even see him in the top 15 or 30 or so on the race on the day. Either way, he comes through. Matteo Trentin and Kwiatkowski end up staying in the middle between those. And then you have the two on the front just powering away. And in the back, you have, and so the gap keeps showing about the same. Now, there's some controversy as to Fuglsang's conversation afterwards in his interview, stating that the time gaps were erroneous. And there's a little bit of history. Cyclocosm on Twitter, when I mentioned him again, he does How the Race Is Won. He was posting out some of his screenshots and some pictures over the years showing Amstel Gold has a history of basically incorrect time gaps that they've shown. So, you know, it shows like a minute and it's really like 10 seconds. I mean, some egregious times over the years. However, on this one, the guys were blaming it, and Cyclocosm was saying, hey, you know, as a DS, you should know that the time gaps aren't correct for this race. It just doesn't always happen. However, looking back and timing myself, they looked like they were on. So the problem you get, though, is, remember, Fuglsang, well, just step back a little bit. You have Strade Bianche comes down with Fuglsang and Alaphilippe. Alaphilippe maybe not doing as much work as Jacob and can have a hard kick. So Fuglsang got nipped there by Alaphilippe. Alaphilippe, I don't know if he was faking it, but he rode strong in Strade Bianche, but he ends up getting the win. So Jacob actually says in his interview, hey, I told him this time, you know, you do the work and I get the win. And he says, and he wouldn't agree to it. Well, I think he's being facetious. Of course, he's not going to agree to it. But either way, the point being is they've got a little bit of a history. And Alaphilippe has a kick to him. Now, he just lost previously, which was the race that we had the other day. Anyway, he lost to Mathieu van der Poel. And so, he's pretty much can finish it off. But Van der Poel is a guy that can actually beat him, but he's not in the break with him. He's in the break with Fuglsang. So what's Fuglsang going to do? Well, you wouldn't expect him to be driving the pace. You try to get rid of him on the Kauberg, try to get rid of him on these previous climbs, and then be able to solo in, because Fuglsang can really, has a very good finish, so he's able to do so. However, he's not able in this case to get rid of, even after 166 miles, get rid of Alaphilippe. So he's basically now going to be driving him to the finish and then getting out-kicked. So his team starts to tell him no more pulling through. So they're coming up to the Kauberg the last time, and they start the bottom. You're on 3K, and by the time you get to the top, it's inside 3K. By the time you get to the top, you're about 1.2 kilometers to the finish. As they're on the bottom, it's about 50-some seconds to Mathieu van der Poel. It's about 26 or so seconds to Kwiatkowski, who's now drafted alone in the middle. But these guys are going. I mean, at some point, they're tightening their shoes on the climb, Alaphilippe and Fuglsang. Fuglsang's not going to pull through. That's perfectly fine. I think that was a great option for him, even though he was guaranteed second place. but he's not going to pull through. So Alaphilippe is determined to do this. And they both complained about the timing and saying, there's no way they can make up, 15 seconds in a kilometer. Well, I'm sorry. When you watch that climb and what the timing was at the bottom, which I checked, it was legit until the time they're at the top. I mean, Van der Poel is drilling it up that climb, and he brings that gap down to 30-some seconds. Kwiatkowski also takes they take a chunk out of time in a kilometer up the climb. So up the climb, it does make a difference, especially when you're able to kind of coast and tighten your shoes up. I mean, come on. Anyway, I'm watching this, and I'm pulling for Fuglsang or Kwiatkowski or anybody, Woods, who's back 30-plus deep to get the win. They come over the top. They're cruising down to the finish. They're playing games, and it's just playing into everyone else's hands. As they're coming through a kilometer to go, Kwiatkowski is basically on them. He gets into the move, and then he does the most amazing thing. He goes to the front and starts drilling it. I'm like, okay, well, maybe he's just okay with third place, because now Alaphilippe is looking perfect. But the problem is Mathieu van der Poel from K out starts hitting, about 800 meters. He hits the front, and it works out to perfect timing for him. What happens is about 250 to go, as Alaphilippe decides to start kicking around Kwiatkowski, who'd been pulling this whole time. Mathieu van der Poel starts kicking, and he's just a few meters off the back of those. So his sprint starts as Alaphilippe's sprint starts, and Van der Poel, as soon as he starts to kick, you can see he's going to have this thing won, and it's in the bag. And you're right, he does. Simon Clark, I forgot to mention about 6K or so. Simon Clark goes off with Mollema. So you have Alaphilippe, Fuglsang, then you have Kwiatkowski, Matteo Trentin, and then you have Mollema and Simon Clark. And Simon Clark is pulling so hard that it is fishtailing Mollema trying to stay on his wheel. It's very impressive, and you can just see the strength of these different riders. Coming to the finish, Simon Clark ends up just sitting on the wheel of Van der Poel. It's a great move by him. He then ends up... it's a great move by him being Simon Clark. He then ends up being able to kick with Van der Poel, and he's the only one within any shooting distance of Van der Poel at the finish. They come across 1 and 2. Fuglsang ends up doing a great thing and comes around Alaphilippe and ends up getting third himself. And, it's interesting. You say that and you go, oh, look, Fuglsang actually beat Alaphilippe in the sprint. I don't know if him being Fuglsang making Alaphilippe do some of the work in the last 4 or 5 kilometers, had a problem. Alaphilippe also said he was cramping, so maybe Fuglsang would have actually won on the day had he finished. I tend to think his strategy and getting third the way he did was still a better bet than him getting it for sure. I mean, his odds of winning were, I would say, 70 to 30. He's not going to win that race against Alaphilippe. And doing a cat and mouse one-on-one there, all Alaphilippe has to do is get a little kick. He doesn't need to contend. Anyway, amazing finish, amazing race. A Dutch winner. The last one they'd have was 2001. Rabobank guy beating Lance Armstrong. I think that's what it was. I'm trying to remember who it was. Decker, maybe one of those guys. Decker or... honestly, I'm not totally sure. Point is, it's been a while for the Dutch to have a winner on their home turf. You have a national champion, Dutch national champion, road national champion, winning the race. His dad won back in 1990. His grandfather, Polidor, is a French champion. I don't think he ever won Amstel Gold. But the point is, you have a lot of fanfare, celebrity in the Van der Poel, and then he just does this like it's a movie star type of finish. Personally, I loved it. It's a great finish. Really good to see. Now I think he's pretty much queued himself up to be the guy coming up, because he's going to be able to get. He's in a contract with a small continental team, and they're not going to really probably be able to do much to keep him around. And then he's going to be able to basically charge whatever he wants to get into whatever big team he pretty much wants for this point. So he did well in Gent-Wevelgem. I think he was 4th there. Dwars, I think he won that. Flanders, he was 4th there. Bremingspil, that's the one he just beat over Alaphilippe. So very impressive. look, pretty excited for him. He seems to be a good guy. I know he has a contract with this casino team, and like I said, it's going to be tough going for someone's going to pay a lot of cash to get him onto their team. It'd be interesting to see what he can do on any kind of, Tour de France type of riding. I'm not sure exactly where he is on that stretch for his riding. Okay, so next we have coming up this week we'll have Flèche Wallonne, and it's got the Muir de Huy, the final little pitch up to the climb there at the finish, and it'll be really interesting. Now Andrew van der Poel is not in this race, so it will be interesting to see who could come out and challenge Julian Alaphilippe. One guy that you've seen do well in this race is Alejandro Valverde. Well, it was the first time since, what did I see here today, since 2016, sometime in May, that he's finished outside the top 50 in any race he's done. He was nowhere to be seen, and he's not been Valverde that you know of. He's got the rainbow stripes. He's a world champion, reigning world champ, which he's on fire last year, winning a bunch. Not quite the year. And is it the curse? Look, maybe he's reached his peak. He was just there, and now at his age, he just can't do it. Or he's just, it seems unlikely that Valverde is the type that would be kind of resigned to, happy, the fatted calf, just being okay and kind of turning it over and not really doing the work, because he still always seems like a driven person. So it'll be interesting to see what he does, and if he gives any fight against Alaphilippe coming up here in the next Wednesday for La Flèche Wallonne. And then we have, like I've said before, we have Liège-Bastogne-Liège coming up on the weekend, which is even more of a climber's race, and looking forward to that one as well. Okay, well, thank you for joining us for a quick recap of the Amstel Gold. I just thought I'd put this out there to kind of give my take on and little excitement that I had, and my house is going a little crazy. They're wondering why I'm freaking out and enjoying this race so much. Fewfold. It's good to see Alaphilippe, who's, I also read this morning, as far as some of these one-day races, the only time he's lost is when Van der Poel's in the race. So seemingly interesting little aspect there. But when you get the same guy winning over and over, sometimes you like to see the underdog. And at some point, Van der Poel is not going to be the underdog anymore. But it's just exciting to see the way he attacks and gets come back. He gets these wrecks, and he just loads it on. I mean, seeing him up the Cauberg, if you get a chance to watch the last 3K, watch that where he's pulling, and watch Mollema on the back of the climb there, as he was doing with Simon Clark, just all spinning around like he was getting the tail whipped, trying to hold the wheel of Van der Poel as he's dragging up that climb. It was very impressive, and a lot of poise for that kid. I mean, just a huge engine, and everyone is in awe at this point. And look, I hope it's legit, and I hope we look back years to come and we see that this guy is kind of the real deal, especially as Sagan is kind of moving his way out. I mean, he's had a tough year. He had Paris-Roubaix, he was in the mix, but other than that, he hasn't been. And so it's kind of exciting to see someone else with a little bit of flair and excitement. So anyway, thanks again for joining us, Between Two Wheels Podcast. Check us out on our Facebook page, YouTube channel, and anywhere that this podcast can be found.